Well, we get ready to get started. I'm John McWilliams. I've been stuck doing this for I don't know how many years. Way too many.
You should be so good at it, John.
Well, I got stuck, learned about it. What we're going to try to cover is a few different things about the railroad than we knew before. Usually I have a handout. My printer didn't work. I'm afraid I'm supposed to be a proud owner of a new printer. So I don't have a handout today. I think that's the first time I've done this in a long time without a handout. Well, what I'd like to do is show you a few things I don't think you really know. All right, what we'll do is start off with, like I said, we're talking railroading. To me, railroading is anything with rails. So first thing we'll talk about, we're standing right here where the streetcar was. Streetcar came around this block right here, around and turned up that way. The streetcar went right here. Whoops. I ain't got, usually I have somebody have me pictures ready, but I don't. The streetcar, here's the streetcar, one of the streetcars. This is on that corner right there. What you see, the old building there was the old stagecoach stop. Stagecoach, well, where all the stagecoaches were.
That on that end?
Yeah, on that end, right down there. So you rode the streetcar. You notice the streetcar's going that way on this one. I think on this next one. This one is coming into town. I got it green, which I think streetcar was actually yellow. Nobody knows that, so I ain't gonna say anything. Here it is going around the block, right up here.
Yeah.
So you recognize that one, huh? In here, this is the building right here, which is the oldest building in the state of Alabama, commercial building. Originally by the Sutherlands, built by the Sutherlands, who go out Texas and become famous at the Alamo. Here's the building. Somebody asked me about the old building. Who did you ask me about the building that was right here?
Yeah.
There it is.
Okay.
It just happened to be in this picture. Old Masonic Lodge.
Okay.
I think that's the last one of these. Yeah. All right, we'll walk on up here to this next corner. Like a streetcar came around here and it had a slip switch, which I'll explain to you when we get up there. Because how many of y'all even know what a slip switch is? Anybody? I got something new to tell. All right, this is probably one of the most important corners in Tuscumbia. When all this, the train came here, no, this was here. They built the train north of town. Well, what did town do? It moved to the train. All right, the original Tuscumbia Railway was strictly horse-drawn. There was no steam engine with it. And I got a picture of how we get it. And these are what the passenger cars look like. Some drawing what they look like. Yeah, what about that? What's different about that stagecoach? It's got what?
People on both sides sitting up there.
It's designed to go both ways because they didn't have a way of turning it around. Now, I've got an original drawing from the Leeton News newspaper, a drawing that got put in there. And he had the people inside like this, but all the ones on the top, he had their face black. And I didn't give you some idea. The original train stopped right here. At this corner right here, the Tuscumbia Railway didn't go any further than that. Now, when they invented the Tuscumbia Court in Decatur, it started right there and went to Decatur. So they had to make a deal to use the same track by two train companies. And they had a merger type deal. That was the first one in the United States, by the way. Another thing you have to realize about the train here, you see that dip? Trains don't go through dips very well. If you can imagine, there was a hump built from right here to the other side of the street up at the top, straight. So you went straight there. That's a big hump right there. So humps that the old Model T cars had trouble getting over. It was like this. But what they found out, the kids loved it. They'd back off, make sure there's no trail. Boom! Pop! And see if they kept Dad's car or not, you know. But then also here, when they first started, about where that red car is right there, used to be a great big old pond. Most people don't realize that. The railroad went through a pond. And so they said there was always people fishing in it. because it's full of fish. And that was one of the things we had to get rid of. Now, talk about here, just going to talk about something some of you probably never heard of, maybe most of you. How many have ever heard of the Sheffield Tuscumbia Street Railway Company? Yeah, you cheated. How many? Hell, none of y'all heard that? Shame, shame. Do what? All right, there's a street railway because when they built the iron mills in Sheffield and the shops and moved all the shops from the Southern Railway, Memphis and Charleston out here, you either had to walk, ride your horse. There's nobody gonna ride a horse and tie it up all day, so you walk to work. So they built before the streetcars were here. They built them a little steam train, and it'd run from right here up Main Street, turn across, go through the Dessler baseball field, and on into Sheffield, so that you could go to work, get you buy a ticket. That's before the streetcar, and it operated until the streetcar put it out of business. And then when they built the North Alabama Railway, which ran from Sheffield to Birmingham, Southern Railway, or Memphis and Charleston at the time, refused to make an attachment to that track. They wouldn't serve it because they're trying to buy it. They weren't going to serve it. So they had to build another train track down 4th Street, past a church down here, the Presbyterian Church, and on into most shows to serve that people. So you had two little trains that went these two ways. Do what?
I live on 4th Street. I'm saying, I hate there used to be a train track.
Yeah, train track. Now, strange thing about that, there was a small train type this way, just maybe 1 or 2 engine, small engine that pulled them. And they dressed the engine up to make it look like a streetcar in those days. Just a streetcar. It has a smokestack. One day, they had to cross the road going to, I guess I should explain this. If you go down here about 3 blocks, 1, 2, about 3 blocks, the track wide, you went to Decatur that way, you turned to the left, you went to Florence. So going down there, so the Florence branch right there and went to Florence, across the bridge. Well, it crossed the track of the Tuscumbia, or Sheffield Tuscumbia Street Railway Company. They made a T there. Well, the law said the Tuscumbia Sheffield Street Railway Company had to stop because the Memphis and Charleston was there first. Well, they didn't one day, and they crashed right there close to the Presbyterian Church. On board the train was a big shot of the Memphis and Charleston Railway. He gets injured. It starts a war. So instead of the war, they had to pay a man. They built him a little house, like we call it a playhouse. They put it right beside the track, and every time a train came from Tuscumbia Sheffield Railway Company, the man had to go out there and lay the things down and stand there, make sure nobody got there, and then come back up. The train didn't come all day. He still had to stay in that building all day. And that was part of the contract. How many of you heard that story? I know a new one. I like that if I come up with a new one. And that little house is still sitting up there. I can't think of behind the house street address. Anyway, that little house they built still in town.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that, you don't remember the name of the street?
I don't.
It goes down 5th Street and whatever.
It went down 4th.
Went down 4th.
Yeah. This train went down 5th. The other train went down 4th. Then we had a train go up Main.
8th Street that went toward Sheffield?
All right.
You don't remember.
While we're talking about the train right here, I'll discuss this one. This coming Cortland Decatur, that first locomotive looked like this. United States or Americans did not build them, so we had to buy it from England. And since we bought it from England, it had a standard English gauge of 4 foot 8.5. Standard gauge. Because the South, there was not a standard gauge. The South used a 5 foot gauge. But since it was 4 foot 8, when they brought the Memphis and Charleston here, they changed it back to 5 foot. And always the argument was keep any damn Yankee train off Southern tracks. So I don't know where that argument stood until the 1880s. But there was a problem with these. The English built their track straight. No, we didn't. And these big wheels had a tendency to jump a track. Going to hit the curb, it jumped track. It decided it didn't want to go straight when it curved. So they had to come up with a new idea. How do you stop that? You put two little wheels. That's all it was designed to do, was to pull the train the front end around and make it go around the curve. That became the big invention of the day for Southern tracks. And you can say David Dessler had a big to do with it. David Dessler is going to play a very important part in the railroading. This little engine didn't have but one set of wheels pulling, which means it didn't have the strength to slip on the wheels because it had more power than it did weight. So he decided he was going to find a new idea. What could they put on the track to make it up here that they grab a hold and run? So he did an experiment right here in town. And he has a list down there. We tried water, we tried this, all the way down the list. And what grabbed the track and held on? How many of you know what grabbed the track and held on? Sand. He wrote to the Railroad Journal and told everybody that putting dry sand on the track, it grabbed traction and the train could go. Well, they read it in the New Red Union. Everybody tried it. Today, every train in the world uses sand for traction. And it was done probably right here on this street right here. I mean, I heard that story. So that's how that did. Oh, and it was named the Triumph. I see it sitting on here. I put the name on it. Because it was a Triumph over the horse. They hoped to be the last steam engine they ever had to buy. Oh, I think we'd go to this corner. Picture of the train right there in town. I cheated a little bit because the train wasn't green. It was black. Anybody know why it's supposed to be black? I painted it green anyway. For fun. So why would
It's cold so the black soot don't show up on the paint.
No?
It's a good answer, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
It's the only color they had.
No. Because Southern Railway had a deal. Any passenger train was painted green, any freight train was painted black. Never heard that either, huh? So
the passenger trains were green,
green.
and the freight trains were black.
Right. So if you saw the engine, you knew what kind of train it was. Well, there it is. I wanted to show this. Trains were a big deal in this day. When the last train pulled out of Tuscumbia, it was parked right there. It backed out. Anybody know why it backed out?
Couldn't turn around.
You got that right. There was no track that way. Track was gone. So there was an argument back in this day when Tuscumbia pulled a stunt and disease. They decided that Southern Railway was not going to stop a train in Tuscumbia no more until it was over with because Memphis was having so much trouble with disease. Well, Sheffield said, hey, you can stop here in Sheffield. We don't worry about Tuscumbia then. Southern Railway liked that idea, so they moved all their trains to Sheffield and left this blank. Took all the trains out of Tuscumbia. The last trains to go through here were in World War II troop trains. The last scheduled trains through downtown Tuscumbia. And so they moved on to Sheffield. Well, when they do, they use the Sheffield station. Well, argument, you can't do that. That's all. Tuscumbia agreed to build a new station out here on the main line on 1st Street. Right there where the softball fields are. Up top of the hill of it. So they built this new station right there. Tuscumbia, we ain't going to have that. That's our station right there. So we'll fix you. We won't build a street to thing. So there'll be no way you can go to it. So Tuscumbia didn't build a street to the new depot they built. Sounding good, don't it? Well, what did Sheffield do then with people at Tuscumbia? They found out they could just ride all the way to Sheffield and jump on a streetcar and come back. It was easier. So they quit using 1st Street. So Tuscumbia had to run out there and quickly build a road. And still to match the streetcar, anybody know what they did? On the taxi service. In its heyday, looking around that way. And you can see the passenger train coming in right there. You look close. 1906, isn't it? Yeah. I can remember that date. Don't know why. Anybody know where the depot was before they built the one there? Where was the Tuscumbia depot before that one? There wasn't one. They used a hotel. There wasn't one. All right, this is the, like I said, there was all the railroad stuff was before the depot was built. As you can see, the two trains out there, one passenger, one freight. Back in those days, they were all fancy painted up. And they would stop here at lunch, about lunchtime, and you would eat. And they usually gave you 30 minutes to eat. So you had to go in and eat in a hurry and come back out. And you'll never guess what they gave the train crew to drink. Beer. Oh, this is, might as well, that's all sort of out of time, but show you something. This is probably the railroad's favorite train. You'd meet that train too, wouldn't you?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, guess to me, they all dressed up when they come to meet it. You notice that? All of them are dressed up.
They're going somewhere.
What's that mean?
Not spend our money.
You know.
This is a station that they had to build on First Street because of all the fight moving it to Sheffield. Now, when I was growing up, my dad was a railroad engineer and fireman. The Tennessean went and stopped at this station. It didn't stop at this one, it stopped at that one. And so my mother would drive over and meet the train and get him off at this station every night at 10:10. Yeah, the Tennessean ran a pretty straight schedule. Now, like I told you, I tried to move it all here. And finally, the city of Tuscumbia sued the Southern Railway, talking about how we did all this, we Tuscumbia, we did this, we've been mistreated. The state railroad people agreed that Tuscumbia is being mistreated. So they told them that they had to schedule a train, a passenger train in here every day. So 35 and 36 would come through Sheffield, it'd come up here, she'd pull up here, serve Tuscumbia, then she'd back out, get on the main line and go. And when it's coming from Memphis, it'd come right straight up this way, serve Tuscumbia, and back out to the main line and go to Sheffield. And then it'd stop at First Street Station. So it was going, what, 5 blocks? And stop at both stations. I might as well just show you this one while I'm here. Here's the train track being taken up. The Southern Railway moved out. 46 or 47, right in there. What's your 48? So where's that picture's made right there? During the 30s, when everybody was going broke, Southern Railway had problems. It couldn't afford to buy new locomotives. Southern Railway was, from Civil War on, never did really regain all its power back. And so it had to keep repairing its old steam engines, which were done right down here in Sheffield, the shops. They had everything moved here. I'll explain that to you I'll make sure I tell you that story too. So they had it all sitting here, and so it made a situation where Southern Railway saw this new thing coming, diesel locomotives. So they decided they were going to put their money into diesel trains. No more of this old steam train stuff. They're going to put their money in diesel. And by the way, they were the first railroad to go all diesel. And that was because they were broke. So the new engines had to be diesel. Well, the first major diesel train to run through Tuscumbia was known as the Joe Wheeler. Can y'all guess how they got its name? Who was one of the largest stockholders in the Southern Railway? Mrs. Joe Wheeler. If she wanted to go somewhere, the train would stop and pick her up. Now, there's one important thing they didn't put on this train. A muffler. So every morning at 7 o'clock, that train left that station and went right through Tuscumbia. It woke everybody up. Everybody started filing complaints, and so the train had to go real slow through Tuscumbia and get outside before she could gear up. And it'd come down here, it'd go into the Y. It'd pull here to let the passengers out, get ready for the next day. It'd pull down there towards Sheffield, and it'd back up across the bridge and pull back up here, and it's ready to go that way the next morning when it started. And that was the Joe Wheeler. And they got so busy they had to put extra cars on it, which you can see it actually wasn't put on that one. Regular freight cars, because it wasn't designed to have anything but its unit. The freight depot was about just a little bit side of the roundhouse was a freight depot. Now, I've unloaded cars there in my lifetime. They'd back them in here and set them down, and we'd have to unload them. Back when I was a teenager, you know, you unload lumber cars and stuff, commodities, by hand. The super train of our time. What was the cruising speed? Tennessean. Anybody know? 85. Can you imagine going through Cherokee 85 miles? No, Dad said he pulled it through there many a time at 85 miles an hour. And said the crossing he hated the worst was the one right there at right there before you hit Big Bear Creek, that little crossing right there. He said it'd be blocked, you know, people couldn't see to get right up on it. And 85 miles an hour, you don't have a whole lot of choices. But he liked that ride, that thing, because it only stopped at all the big stations between here and Washington, D.C. That's how far it ran. And the days when it was over with, this is your last train, passenger train. You see, they weren't green anymore. They were still used. They'd given up on the green.
So do you know about what year that is?
65, I believe it was. Oh, this is one of the heydays in Sheffield. Same train, 35. Been around the railroad too much. 36 and 35 were the noon train, and 45 and 46 with the Tennessean. I rode both of them just for the fun of it. You know, it's nice when you got a pass. Yeah, he got on the railroad in 1940 or 41, right in there. He was a fireman. I think he had to be a fireman legally for 7 years. But when the war came, a lot of that stuff broke. They drafted him, and he got a notification the next day that he'd been promoted to engineer. Of course, the government didn't say tough luck, you know. But I'll tell you a story about this. This one I bet y'all haven't heard, and it's unusual. My dad had his pilot's license. He loved to fly. Every time he had an extra dollar, off in that airplane he went. So when the war broke out and they drafted him, you know, it was the Army Air Corps at that time. We went in the Air Force. So he was joining the Army, and he signed everything up and put his pilot's license on top of the paperwork so he wanted to be in our Air Force. So he filled out his paperwork. He goes out there and gets in line. He said his sergeant picked it up, said he called him Mac. He said, Mac, I see here you work for the railroad. He said, yes, sir, I did. He said, what are you? He said, well, I just been promoted to engineer. He said, do you mean you can operate a train? He said, yes, sir, that's what I do for a living. He said, you're going railroad. So he took his file and tore him right in half and said, we can train a pilot before we can train an engineer. And made him go back up, sign up for railroad.
Oh, man.
And then they put him in General George Patton's private railroad. He had stories, that group had stories to tell beyond anything you could ever do. And they're all gone now. And I used to love go listen to them. Because it always started out, you ain't going to believe this, or this wasn't funny when this happened. But, you know, my funny story that I loved is that General Patton ordered supplies into a town because he was going to meet them there with his tanks. Well, he forgot to do something. He hadn't taken the town yet. Train pulls in. They were laughing about it. I said, we pulled into town, all these German soldiers looking at us like, what are you doing? He said, we just calmly stopped, put it reverse, backed out. He said, they didn't shoot at us and we didn't shoot at them. Show you this one. This is my dad going by the house one day when he was running trains. He was running the kids' trains. So I went out there to catch his picture, and there he is. He just waved and got a cigarette and hit it, and that's what killed him. Southern Railway, back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, and especially the 1900s, the most important sport by all was baseball. Everything was baseball related. And of course, each business had their own baseball team. Southern Railway wanted to have the best baseball team. So if you were a good ball player, you had a good job. Now, Honey's not going to, I imagine some of his brothers are. What, there's 7 of them? Yeah. The Sheffield Roundhouse. That's the one we copied this one out of. I'll tell you a story about that. When we were going to build a roundhouse, the meeting was upstairs. And I wasn't privy at first when they all started setting it up. I was working that part. So we had the building up there, and the guy puts a copy of a roundhouse in front of us. And of course, all of city officials and all went, man, that looks great on there. And it came to me, what do you think, John? I said, that's a dang Yankee roundhouse. I don't want no Yankee roundhouse. Everybody's face went, bonk, like, what? I said, it's a Yankee roundhouse. And the guy, the engineer that did it all, was from New York.
Of course.
He did what he knew. And he looked at me, what's the difference? And I showed him pictures like that of a Southern roundhouse. He said, all right, I'll redesign it. No extra cost. I'll redesign it like a Southern roundhouse. And he did. He said he was very proud that he did. I'm not sure it caused a little stink that day. Out this far. Since I was telling you about all the trains that went up that street, the Louisville and Nashville Railroad, well, when it was being formed, it had to cross Tennessee River. Well, they thought it was going to be big. They planned to cross the river, connect with the Southern here, and go on south. Southern Railroad said, no, you ain't. And they said, well, we are. So they tried to find them a place to build their bridge across Tennessee River. Every time they found them a place, Southern Railroad would go buy the land on the south side of it, so they couldn't put it there. So finally they had to sign a contract to use the same bridge over here. So both train used companies had the same new bridge. Then when they got Tuscumbia, they were going to connect here. Now the railroad track came right down this street, right here. It came in, it got double track. They turned them around back there at where the art museum is. You know that the road sort of do a little like this. That was to turn the trains around. They turned the locomotive around. It was turned around right up there. So the trains were going up down. So you got trains going up this street, trains going up this street. You had trains going down 4th Street, and you had trains going down 5th Street. Then you had a streetcar coming down this street and going around that. This thing was covered with track. People don't realize how covered it was. And another thing we had, I'll tell this story. The streetcar, there was a couple who came here from Russellville, came to town, and a streetcar, and they had a 12-year-old girl with them. And she stepped on the edge of the, you know how this got a drop off right there, tripped, fell in front of the streetcar, and they ran over and killed her. And she was 12 years old. She still walks the street here, by the way. She plays in that museum, in the depot. I've seen her more than once. What? So you had trains, streetcar. Now, we're going to go over here and we're going to go in the depot. And I'll explain how about it in a roundhouse. What time is it, by the way? like I said, this you and me wouldn't be allowed in this part originally. These are offices and offices upstairs. And they had handrail dividers. Today we have cubicles. They use handrail dividers to do the same thing we use cubicles. And I've heard the women upstairs talking about having to open their little door and go in and out instead of a cubicle that we use today. You'll see that this is a design. This was built by Harvey Robbins Group. This, because we couldn't find one of these anywhere. And originally the railroad had them back to back.
And this is designed after the original.
Yes. Well, you'll never guess how we got the height of it. Nobody knew. So they brought in little chairs one day and had us sit down in them, and we decided, well, I like this height, and that's the height you're sitting there. And that's how we got this height. So, like I said, you would come in this door, you go over here, and you fill out your paperwork. Originally, the way it was designed.
That door is employees only.
Yeah, and actually had the employees only on, or something like originally on it. And so it's used today. And are we allowed to go all the way through? Any route? All right, all the way through. So we're allowed to go up or just through? All the way. All right. Let's come on back in here a little bit.
William H. Johnson, who was a cousin of Captain Keller, special ordered it in upstate New York City. And when it came here to the depot by train, William Johnson's wife didn't like it. Does that surprise you?
No, not when you get to witch people.
Captain Keller purchased it for his family. And Helen and the teacher rode back and forth from Tuscumbia out to Belmont toward that direction where they had a farm. And it made a mini trip. It was kept on the property that Helen Keller's home place for years. And the problem was that the moisture where it was kept was deteriorating the wheels on it. And Harvey Robbins found out about it, and Harvey wanted to buy it, but the owner wouldn't sell it. So Harvey asked could he have the wheels reinstated on it. It was taken up to the Amish, and they reworked the wheels. This was the first one that was made with the rubber cap wheels. Most of them were steel cap during that era. And velvet interior, kerosene night lanterns on it. It was a one-horse Cadillac of this era. Beautiful.
Like I said, I had forgotten the story over all these years, and I hadn't used it in a long time.
Why did Miss Thompson not like it?
I'm sorry?
Why did, you said Miss Thompson didn't like it? Johnson.
Yeah.
Why did she not like it?
Why did she not like it? Why did that be acting like it? How much water